Hello, welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name is Peter Howard at PA Howdy on Twitter. This is a live stream we do every Wednesday at 9:30 till we get tired, run out of comments, or we go to bed because we got work in the morning. Where we talk about Dynasty fantasy football or just fantasy football in general. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or trade questions, which is the most common, to be fair, that you want us to weigh in on or discuss as a group, drop in whatever comment box or whatever streaming platform you happen to be watching us on, because we go to 2 now. Yeah, we don't do Facebook no more. So yeah, welcome back. Zach is here as usual. Dynasty Outhouse is not here as usual, so it's a pretty typical day. How's your day going? Hey, Zach, how's it going?
It's not going too badly. It apparently is Jahan Dotson Day on my timeline.
Oh, it is?
I don't know why everyone is all of a sudden thinking that Jahan Dotson is going to be a buy because he had 5 touchdowns in his rookie year early, and so now all of a sudden everybody is like, oh, he is a buy. He's wide receiver 54 on Keep Trade Cut, and it's like, there's a reason.
There's a reason. No, I think it's overthinking season, because there's literally anyone who doesn't have their ranks pretty well done at this point either starts their process really late, which is perfectly fine, and they'll catch up, or they're just talking the talk. Like, I honestly think 90% the stuff coming on right now is just it's filler. And I guess, business go to business. We got to get your eyes and attention, but I think it's all nonsense. But it also leads to overthinking season, where you talk yourself into that disappointing player for the last 3 years, because it can happen, and you invest way too much time, energy, and hopefully not, but probably value in speculating on it. And yeah, I think that's where we are. We did it for the draft for the last week or so, with everyone talking about everyone's deeper dark prospect, who either weren't deep dark prospects or you'll probably never hear about again. And I guess so now moving on to the NFL. My timeline's mostly been actually the worst kind of filler, Twitter filler. I'm not seeing a lot of great stuff apart from Casey every now and again selling her shirts. And just the worst. And I mean the worst. I want to see some people's homework, because there are some literal networks with, here is the production of college. Like, I would need to check that math. I need to get my red pen out and check that these people know math. You would be hard pressed to do a worse job with holistic metrics this far into the game, as it were. It's like 1950. It's old math, okay? And proof that old math actually did suck, apparently. And highlights of players that are either very good and we should know that, or very bad, and we should probably already know that too. So that's my timeline. Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'd rather have Jahan Dotson than all.
I guess.
But it is like, and I get the second guessing season. I like that as a title. It made me smile, but it's also part of the reason why I start doing the work on this so early, because I don't want, I want my guess to be done. I don't want a second guess when I don't have more information. Like, we literally have had no information since the combine.
I have seen a lot of CJ. Well, we had a trade, and we've seen a lot of CJ Stroud as now the Dynasty QB1. Yeah. No one in your league, well, maybe one person, and they roster him or are about to spend too much on him, feels that way. And again, anyone who's doing that with their ranks are just trying to fill a dead spot to grab your attention. Like, come on, guys. Jesus, I had him higher than everyone or most people, and it was worlds away from where Keep Trade Cut, which tells you all you need to know about it, Currently have geez, trade for Jalen Hurts. That was my takeaway from this stuff on my timeline, because he's not part of the conversation, but for some reason he's ranked 2 or 3 spots below that tier. I'm like, we said he should be in that tier last year because he'd finally proven it, and he proved it again, and he's fallen. He's lower now. Like, what do you all? What? Okay,
that's a funny one, because he had a great season, but the idea is that the offense was bad, and so we're worried about him. But he had a great season in a bad offense, and so
that one. Hey, Wade, I really appreciate that, man. Thanks very much. We are what we are, but we're pretty happy about it. I appreciate you joining in. Dave Rice, Pete and Zach, have you guys reacted to Javon Baker yet? No, he's one of the names floating around my timeline. Everyone's new sleeper, I guess. Not really. Did we look at him a little bit last time?
I talked Javon Baker on last week's episode of the Dynasty Dummies Hootenanny. I can go back through. I had him, Dave, ranked surprisingly to me higher than I anticipated. Like, he's in the group of players I have that are below Odunze and Brian Thomas and Xavier Worthy. So 6'2", 195 pounds, started off at Alabama, didn't get much run at Alabama, ended up at University of Central Florida. This past season, 52 catches, 1,139 yards, a couple of 7 touchdowns. I think Baker is actually a very savvy route runner. He does a good job getting release off the line of scrimmage, and he also uses double moves in route really well against man coverage. But off the line of scrimmage, you like to see, especially if a player like Baker, who's 6'2", is going to play outside, you like to see them be able to have multiple moves to get off press coverage. And Javon Baker uses a stutter. He's really good at hand fighting, so he'll swipe chop a defender's hand when the defender tries to get on him. And he also uses a really good jab step and then goes the other way. He uses leverage and fakes at the stem of his route to win. He's excellent at timing up back shoulder throws, and those are NFL throws. Every team now will run that player down the sideline, get the corner on his outside shoulder, so the corner's got outside leverage, and then have the receiver turn back and throw the ball to the back shoulder. He's great at that. And he is a master of late separation. So he doesn't always run away from man coverage, but he can re-separate when he loses that separation in route. He uses his arms really well. He'll hold off a defender and then extend and explode. I don't think that he's a true straight line separator. I don't think that he's fast enough to run away from defenders, especially at the next level. And I don't think he's that sudden. I don't think even though he is smart and he uses fakes and a lot of different things, I don't think he's quick. So I don't think that he is creating separation by being either fast or quick. And I also think that it's really noticeable when he's not getting the ball, where he just doesn't put in the effort. His release is slow if it's a run or an opposite side read, and he just is But overall, again, like I said, I really was surprised by how much I liked Javon Baker, and he's in that tier of players that draft capital is going to matter quite a bit to me, because if he's not top 3 rounds, we got a little bit less interest in, because most of the wide receivers that you have hit in the first 3 rounds.
Age 20 and 21 seasons, from my perspective, he did okay. I think everyone's going to look at his best because it's shiny. His yards per route run is over 3 in this age 21 season. So is his receiving yards per team pass attempt. Relatively small part of his overall team's offense for that kind of number. But here's the thing. you kind of at the age of 21, just about to go to the NFL, playing an 8 out of 17. His slot rate was never over 30%. It was always below 30%, but it did grow from 11% to 27%. And I do like that versatility. He increased his slot usage and was fairly effective on it. And his last year numbers were pretty good. Again, 3.1 receiving yards per team pass attempt and 3.2 yards per route run. That's a good season. But you should be having a good season at age 21 just before you go to the draft. He didn't show much of anything, as Zach said, at his previous team. And his age 20 season is kind of just okay. And his ADOT's carrying a lot of weight in both of those numbers. So 3 looks impressive, over 3 looks impressive. As it stands, I don't care that he only played at 20 and 21, although you always like more samples or played significantly. But I would say that number is influenced by the role he was playing. He did pretty well at that role, but it doesn't strike me as, wow. It's like he falls into a tier of this guy did just about what he should have done with the role he had and where he played. He did pretty well. And like Zach said, the NFL is going to have more words on that. To how much interest I have in that, but there are a lot of players in this draft class specifically that impressed on that role and on others. And Baker looks like he did pretty well that final season. And again, we're deep into the offseason grind waiting for the draft. And the guy with suddenly turning up late in the game with 3 yards per out run in his final season, a later breakout, which is always kind of a concern. The average looks bad. His best season looks good because he only has one real great season. It feels kind of trying to find a last-minute quarterback to save the game kind of a thing, But outside of vibes, I think he did pretty well. His age 20 season is fine. His age 21 season is actually pretty impressive with the role he was running at. But he doesn't put stars and dollar signs in my eyes or anything.
Yeah. I mean,
but again, a statistical profile rarely does. There should be relatively few that stand out. I think he did pretty good for a college player, and is probably worthy of interest from the NFL, but so many in this draft class are.
Do you think, or do you have, and I know we talked about this a couple of years ago and you kind of shrugged and maybe you're still there, but the way the transfer portal is and the way eligibility has been, players are and the way NIL is, so they've got name, image, and likeness money. Like there are players that are staying in college for an awful lot longer, and so that changes a little bit of their profiles. Maybe. I mean, I don't know.
The transfer portals for sure is going to shake up a lot of stuff. I think I'm insulated a little bit from it because when models are going to get absolutely trashed by it, especially if they use conference adjustments, but they were always already bad if they did that. By the way, they were bad. The conference adjustments are bad. Context adjustments, like you look at it and know and go, okay, so that number's a little real, that number's a little not real. Perfectly fine, in my opinion. I think we should tell the story of the profile rather than just look at the overall number. But I'm a little insulated from it because I got interested in age production and breakout age because it was really interesting. And one of the earliest best signals we had, but it didn't take long to realize that it's, Calvin Ridley wrong. It's not the age you come in at. It's not the age you play at. It's how well you play for what you are. In the same way that it's not your athleticism, it's how good you are with the athleticism you have. And so I think reasonable non-thinking you're a genius who's going to solve who's good and who's bad in those, although you do have to have a black and white finishing result because you have to make a draft pick eventually, realizing that black, white, good, bad is always going to be terrible. But you make the best guess you can. And I think any decent process should be insulated from that kind of thing. The other thing I would say about it is I spoke to a couple years because Travis has been, in the background trying to Halloween boogeyman me like, oh, the transfer portal's coming. Oh, the transfer. Like, I'm not addicted to age like you are, Travis. But he came on my podcast a couple years ago. And I asked him because he knows more about college and probably football than most nerds that I know. Yeah. How is it going to start affecting when players come out and don't come out? And he said, maybe, but you've got to realize it's only the tippy top of names that anyone wants to pay money to get them in their game. And at a certain point, like, should Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors stay in college? Probably not. They're probably going to make more going to the NFL this year. And same with the quarterbacks. But it might be a decision for some, but a very small percentage are actually making money off it. But the transfer portal itself definitely is going to affect a lot of things, and you do have to reconsider your process, especially if it was bound a lot to where players play or how long they played, or if it was age production rather than age-adjusted production. I think it's already changed stuff. I think that's why a lot of things went wrong last year and the year before, and definitely this year for a lot of people. But honestly, I think if you're looking through a profile and trying to get an understanding of how well they did, and then coming to that black and white answer, which is always going to be the worst part, I think we're going to be okay. I don't think it's going to set analytics back or nothing, but it does mean that we could, not to, it makes it sound like I'm trying to, I'm awesome. I'm literally saying I'm awesome.
You are awesome, Peter.
Can and can't do, trying to understand what it possibly can and can't do. I have a more realistic expectation and a more practical approach to it. And I think not that everyone's going to go that route, but if you're trying to do some of the other stuff, literally predict, create a model that does adjust, for example, then yeah, it's going to shake a lot of that stuff up. But that was always kind of weaker too. And I think people doing it know that better than me or anyone else, because they're the ones in the grind of those numbers. And so they already knew that they have to play around with it a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely changing a lot. This is a long answer to a simple question. And hopefully I actually mentioned some of the things I thought about Baker. I forget at this point, Rice, Mr. David Rice. But yeah, I'm one of the most frustrating parts of someone like Baker for me is that he's in this mix of players where ultimately I'm going to have that rank, that where I would take him, especially if he gets NFL interest. But so many players, especially in this class, there are so many wide receivers coming out this year, or could come out this year, or could be drafted, or could go undrafted to teams. It's a really large class, but there's also really depth of utility. And then actually the top is pretty decent. There's a pretty sizable number compared to most draft classes that I actually have relatively significant interest. And that's before we find out about the one or two that actually didn't, or the one or two that actually did, like Deebo Samuel. Even Jalen Waddle at the time was a little bit of a one good year, one bad year for me, and he was hard. There's always that guy. So even before we find out about this is a really deep class, but there are so many of them in this class and every class where my ultimate conclusion outside of the rank, my reasonable too long didn't read takeaway is, yeah, fairly good college player, did well. I hope the NFL gives him a chance. And it's so boring to say, but that's where I think most profiles should put us. He's not disappointing. He's not being exaggerated by a small sample. And there's the community, as it were. At least the community is not doing some of the stuff I saw today, and get better, there'll be less of those edges. It's harder to spot when everyone's on Marshall, and they really shouldn't be, or Laquan Treadwell, or they don't like Diggs because of his draft capital, and they really should, or they don't like Devontae Smith because of his BMI, and they really should. These landmines that people have been tripping on left, right, and center, not just tripping on, but like dancing on, because they really think they've got something in athleticism or size or draft capital, and they're not putting it all together. And sometimes I think people are going to start, good players are going to start tripping on those less and less. That's the ideal. But unfortunately, that means most profiles are going to look pretty decent to me. There's less of those landmines are being triggered. And Baker's one. Like, if people are excited about him, yeah, I can see he had a really great year there. There's no reason to hate on a guy just for having 1 year. As Zach said, there's a transfer portal, there's reality concerns, there are other good players in college. It's reasonable that a great player, a good NFL player, could just have one good year. It's happened before in his final year at age 21 and hit 3 yards per route run. Yeah. But most good players do more than that and do more than that early, sure. But it doesn't mean Baker's bad. And so he fits into this pretty good. Pretty good. Let's see what the NFL thinks. And it sucks, but it's just hopefully going to actually become more common as less of those landmines trip. Actually, not hopefully. I hope you all keep valuing the wrong things, because that's fun for me. I'm going on a bit. Zach looks bored. I'm going to move on. Yeah, I hate that being my answer for Baker, but yeah, he had that last year. Was pretty good. I don't think it's an overly exciting role. If you get some draft capital, then there's always more to the stats, so he could definitely be more interesting than that. But he doesn't strike me as someone too more than that. Hey guys, how many wide receivers you have rated higher than the 23 class? There are two that would be in competition for that top spot. I think Neighbors, because my process again is more limited, would come in right on that line. Marvin Harrison Jr. would be ranked 1. Neighbors and Addison and JSN would probably be of a mix. Like it would be hard for me to separate them. Yeah.
For me, it's too clear. Harrison and Neighbors are clearly above, and then in the Addison and JSN range are another 3 players for me. So Worthy, it comes in right behind him. Brian
Worthy,
Thomas and
Odunze and Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they would be competitive, but they wouldn't clearly be ranked at the top.
Yeah. So they're 2 clearly for me ahead, and then 3 others that are in that same range. So it's a really good class, Cypher, and a really good class because of that top end, because there are 2 wide receivers that I absolutely love, because there is a tight end that I absolutely love, because there are at least 2 quarterbacks that I love, and because there are running backs somewhere.
So there's a few that'll be interesting. One's going to put up a top 12 season. Yeah, it's Harrison, Neighbors. Oh, wait, I didn't saw that. Hang on. Harrison, JSN and Neighbors are neck and neck. I had Tank Dell ranked really high last year. My model did at least, and Addison. I wouldn't have ended up there. I dropped Tank in his rookie year, but again. Yep. There's 2 that would be easily the top of most drafted. I'm trying to get, speaking of which, I'm trying to get more strict on my tiering. Like this year, I don't have a tier 1 at running back. I want my tiers to be kind of intra class, if you know what I mean. The ranks, maybe not, but the tiers, I've always kind of had an intra class.
So that's, I mean, that I know you know this, but that's what I do with my little for Peter worksheet that I have, where it is class to class to class. And so I can easily go back and look and say, wow, I was an idiot for having Darius Geis as high as I did, or Sony Michel or whatever. Yeah. So
yeah, it's not fun, but it is.
But it's nice to be able to go back and look historically, because it gives you context for this class that we've got, because I think I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, because J Mike is under the weather, and so I think I'm doing a solo show tomorrow night, and I'm going to have a little bit more space to fill than I normally do, and I talk a lot. So, but because necessarily draft classes are different, necessarily rookie pick values are different, and I think that we don't do a good job as a whole accounting for that. Where like the 5th pick in this draft class was probably the 3rd pick, or maybe the 2nd pick in last year's draft class. So like, it's to me kind of an interesting function of us looking at that number, that 1st round pick, and saying, oh, it's a 1st. And then next year, oh, it's a 1st. Oh, it's a 1st. I know what a 1st is worth, but they're not all created equal within draft classes. And then within the same draft class, the upper 1st is going to be worth more than a later 1st. But there's some play in that, where like the upper 1st, sometimes an upper 1st is 6 picks. Sometimes an upper 1st is 2 picks. And so it's just kind of an interesting.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to resort my ranks to kind of do some of that. The only player I had in tier 1 last year, wide receiver, was JSN. And Neighbors and Harrison both get into it. So, it looks like I would have had Addison in tier 2. Man, I got strict with myself last year What do I know?
I tried to tell you. I tried.
Hey, Alex. Hey, man, my notes on Allison say no notes. A slightly lower peak than JSN, but did everything for 3 years very well and above expected. And then there's more stuff about what that means.
You know what's
like? There was no. I liked him pretty well.
You know what's really weird, and it's something that I've noticed with London and Addison, and we were just talking Taj Washington before the show, that in spite of Caleb Williams being the best quarterback in this draft class, I don't think he does many favors to his wide receivers the way he plays quarterback. Because he ad-libs and extends plays and plays off script so much that players who go out and run a route have to continue to figure out where he is and what they need to do. And it puts so much of the onus back on his receivers that I think it's really hard to play receiver for Caleb Williams, even though he's fantastic and he completes the ball, completes passes at a really high rate, and he's fantastic. I think it's tricky to play wide receiver for him.
All right, my process has gotten better, okay, but I'm just looking at pre-draft. I've only put 13 players.
Your process has gotten better.
13 players in the first tier since 2019 over 6 years. One of them's Andy Isabella, one of them's Nicole Harry, and one of them's Jalen Rager and Traylon Burks. Rest sheer fire. Oh, Rashad Bateman. Yeah, my tier was shaky. To be fair. Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr.? I have Worthy over Thomas, but honestly, I like Thomas a lot. I think I have him ranked above where most people have him. I was going to say, and I'm not sure of this because I'm not an NFL draft person. I just wait to see what happens. I don't predict it. It's a high A-dot class. It's the type of class the NFL likes to spend draft capital on. Of the two, I expect Thomas to be more tempting to teams earlier. So I kind of expect him to get draft capital above Worthy, even if they both got it.
I so much want Xavier Worthy to fall to Buffalo, because I think he would be such a beautiful, like, hey, go be a reasonable facsimile of what Diggs did. Because I think he can do that. Like, I think he's that type of wide receiver. And yeah, to me, it's Worthy, but it's not like Worthy. It's like, yeah, I like Worthy's at the top of that tier of three for me with Thomas and Odunze. I like all three of them. I think all three of them are good. You don't have to draft Xavier Worthy ahead of Odunze because you're going to necessarily, if you want Odunze on your team, you're going to have to draft him higher than Worthy. Worthy is going to be one of the steals to me, I think, where you're going to get him at 110, 111 and be very happy about it. And Brian Thomas is probably going to go and maybe a little ahead of him because I think, Peter, I think you're right. It's easier for NFL teams to look at Brian Thomas and say, oh, he's big and he's fast. And Brian Thomas goes, brr. And so that's an easy one for NFL teams to go, yeah, we can put that in our starting lineup and have him run real fast down the field and do NFL positive things. And I think also he will do fantasy positive things. But
obligatory hello from Twitch. John Bosch keeps my Twitch channel alive all by himself. I appreciate it, John. Go back to watching Fortnite. Jevon Baker comp Victor Cruz. Don't really.
I've never seen him dance. I don't know. Thing. He's got the salsa. I don't know.
Cruz is a little far back for me to comp directly to my process. He was before I was profiling, so I don't have a memory of it either. I could go back and look to see what I can see, but I can't really comp Baker off the top of my head.
I hate doing comp, Cypher. Like I know that's not
very few stand out.
Well, but the the audience, so like the people that I generally talk to about rookie classes love comps because it's an easy way to go, oh, I know that guy. Right. The problem is, that guy, and this player coming in is not that guy. So like, to me, it's more valuable, and it may not be as fun, and I'm sorry, but it's more valuable for me to look at the traits and like what this player does and how players are succeeding in the NFL. And if these traits that he has tend to be a successful path in the NFL. And I think a lot of what Javon Baker does can be successful. I mean, he's a big wide receiver who can get down the field. He's pretty smart. But as far as comps, like that's not, I hate doing comps. I think the only comp I did this year was Malachi Corley, and I comped him to a dachshund because dachshunds actually have the highest bite rate of any dog in in this country. So
I wonder how they measured the rate. Wade. Godwin is my buy low. I think all good wide receivers typically are a good buy low, especially if your team's in pretty good shape, so you can spend value on points. Obviously. Had the same target share as Evans last year. The new Bucks OC worked with Cooper Kupp, Wando Robinson in college, and should show more love to Godwin. I think the Bucks are still going to be... They surprised me last year with how good they are. I don't expect an improvement from there. But yeah, the players are good, so they're going to do a pretty good job. I wouldn't expect their career best or nothing, but it would be nice if it happened. And those other wide receivers, Evans as well, they're going to be going for especially this time of year with rookie picks and rookie values flying. Yeah. In a class that everyone wants to talk about the wide receivers. Yeah. Good call. Holy cow. Who are the two sleepers you are trying to acquire? I'm starting to hate this term. You're talking about the rookie draft?
Must be rookies, yeah.
I think I'm a lot higher on Worthy than most. I actually did just update the big board just to get a sense of where ADP is. And for the first round, according to the DLF ADP, or the most recent Superflex DLF ADP, is Williams, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Malik Nebbers, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Adunze, JJ McCarthy, Brock Bowers. That's too low. Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson. Looks a little... it's fine. It's the first time I've looked at it with who's too low. So who would I go? Ricky Pearsall. There you go. He's going in the early third round, according to DLF's ADP right now. With a little draft capital, I think the second round will be a steal for him. So going early third's pretty good. And then you've got running backs stick out to me most, like Ray Davis is mid-third. Audric Estime in the late third would be pretty good running back down there, assuming you get some sort of landing spot. He's limited, but pretty good. Dontez Walker, we both like him a lot more than the late third. Yeah. Again, this is before the draft, which is probably what this is reflecting. But these aren't sleepers. You know the names. I don't have like a Javon Baker guy no one's mentioned to you. I think in terms of that, like I said before, the only guy I particularly like, I don't hear much about, is Thrash, probably. And who's the other guy I've got a little higher than you even?
Did you say you had Brendan Rice higher than I did, right?
Yeah, but it's not like I'm overly excited about it. He's ranked wide receiver 13 for me, but I try to be realistic. By the time you get to wide receiver 13, I'm not expecting much from him in the NFL. The ranks are kind of a lie at that point. But 13th favorite, whatever. Yeah. Worthy, Franklin and Thrash are the two I don't hear too much about. They are kind of high ADOT players, but I think they were a little more successful at it where they played in college, as opposed to Adonai or who's getting the hype. Keon Coleman, although his 40 time probably tanked that hype. Yeah, those are the two, Thrash and Franklin, that I think if they have impact in the NFL, it will be fantasy relevant, at least for that day. because of the types of role they play, and so they could escalate. Sorry, Zach, I keep talking to you.
No, it's all good. I don't necessarily think that Troy Franklin is a sleeper. Like there are no more sleepers. Like that's I mean, that's kind of a cop out answer, but like if you're going deeper, Peter mentioned Devontae Walker. You mentioned Ricky Pearsall. I think both of those are really good. Potentially, will potentially fall in your rookie drafts. Jermaine Burton, who I don't necessarily there's a lot of squinting at this, but like his skill set is I said this to J Mike the other day. It's a Temu Drake London. So like, or wish.com Drake London, like that, like that's kind of how he plays. And I think the NFL will like that. And so if the NFL likes that, then you might be in luck. Peter, we talked about Taj Washington before the show.
I was going to say that's probably the name we're bantering around. That
Taj Washington has been,
but he is interesting.
He's been my favorite wide receiver to watch. I do not think he is the best wide receiver. I do think he's the best wide receiver on USC, and being the best wide receiver playing for the best quarterback to me makes me feel a little bit of something. But like, I think he does an awful lot. And then if we're looking at running backs, Peter, you mentioned Ray Davis. I also really like Marshawn Lloyd, who's not necessarily a sleeper, but he's not getting the respect that I think he deserves. And the sleeper, if you want to go sleeper, is Kamani Vidal. And Kamani Vidal feels a little bit like James Washington. Not James Washington. James. Peter, I'm blanking. Was the running back that we liked out of I think it was Louisville. Jaguars. Yeah, you do. James. But anyway, small school, good metrics in terms of combine, and is probably not getting a hit, but also has the capability to be a good running back if he gets a chance. So that's
running
my
backs, if we can explain. Sorry,
no, you're good.
Just in terms of, hey, they could have an interesting NFL role. Carson Steele, Will Shipley. I haven't heard a lot of those. They're below the Marshawn Lloyd fold, who I also think is a little more interesting and very interesting, and Audric Estime, but Shipley and Steele, both pretty interesting for different reasons. Sleeper is all about what's your content diet like, and what do people in your leagues know. It's really hard to guess other people's sleepers, because if I can get away with Xavier Worthy, I will. But yeah, the same names we do for the most part. I do think Taj Washington's probably the one we spent the most time talking about so far, and that's just been today. Versus names that are quite often spoken about. Lamar or Hurts, 4 point per touch. Must be touchdown. It Hurts in whatever format. Yeah.
Yep.
I love Lamar. Go ask. No, you don't have to, but I've been fighting for how good Lamar Jackson was against John Hogue for a minute. So, like, my Hurts credentials, my Lamar credentials are pretty solid, but Hurts is a tier above. PA, howdy. Most likely hates your favorite sleeper. Hey, my Twitter profile. Yeah, I do. I do hate the sleepers. I started there. I wanted to know the players no one else knew, and then I figured out that just knowing the players everyone should know, like that, because we're all so focused on you actually find values on Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. It's like, that's a lot easier. I know they're good, and it's where the path of least resistance to success has come from. Which is, I guess, why I've adopted this kind of depressed tone. Like, I'd love to love a player that you don't know and never heard of, but I can get Mike Evans for a second in some leagues. So what?
You've
come weapons.
You've come an awful long way in that respect.
It's been a fun journey. Hurts has better weapons. See, that's the thing, though. I don't really break it down to the offense. And also, I don't know. No, he does. But I think Lamar's not held back, but I think the weapons in Baltimore are better than the offense showcases. But that just doesn't matter from an NFL point of view because their job is to win games, and they have a just very decided way of winning games. So I'm not going to say they should feature their weapons more because they're a pretty successful team. But yeah, I think Lamar's weapons are a little underrated, but that doesn't matter long term. Yeah, I just think Hurts clearly has shown like he's in a tier with Mahomes and Allen. He's the only one in that tier, the only one to enter that tier since Mahomes and Allen. Lamar's borderline and has had similar upside, and that's why I like him a lot too. But so Justin Herbert, who I like a lot as well, and he's in that tier. So, and CJ Stroud's in there now. Hurts has better weapons. I just read that, stupid Pete. Look at all the party hat guys. Appreciate you, Jerome. Dynasty grinding season. It's definitely grinding.
It's always grind season, Dave.
True Sorensen music. What do you think about the Bengals running backs? Can Chase Brown be relied upon as a flex in a 10-team start 11?
Relied upon is not the way I would phrase that. But I do think that Chase Brown is good enough to give you flex when he's playing and in certain games. It's really funny. I went back and I was watching Isaiah Williams for last week's episode of the Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny because somebody asked me to watch Isaiah Williams, who's wide receiver at Illinois. While I'm watching Isaiah Williams, wide receiver at Illinois, who is fine, good slot receiver, like ish, used to be a quarterback. He's fine. I'm seeing Chase Brown like break run after run after run. And I'm like, you know what? I think before we get into Chase Brown hype season, it may be a good idea to float second round picks and see if you can get Chase Brown, because I think he is a good enough runner that he could end up with a fairly sizable portion of that backfield, and that's valuable.
Yeah, Drew, I'm weird. I play fantasy and don't know much about the NFL, so I'm going to approach it from a slightly left direction. Zach just said the good stuff. I think Chase Brown's ceiling's a little muted. And the reason that matters to me, especially when you're talking about a flex, if you're talking about can he be a top 36 producer consecutively or consistently, like Zach's talking about, a fairly sizable role in that backfield, maybe with upside because he has some talent. Yeah, absolutely. Is he a flex for me? No, mostly I am wide receivers in my flex because they have more regular upside and they actually hit their points per game floor in terms of their average points per game throughout the season more often than a running back. Slightly, wide receivers tend to win the flex that way, but that's a little bit of a too technical point. The point I would have about Chase Brown in general is, especially in regards to is he a flex, I think he's a running back too. And that's great because we need points for that spot as well. And like Zach was just saying, if the cost is right, the trade is right, running backs too are good acquisitions. I wouldn't buy them in the offseason. I'd buy them when you need them and you're just really trying to shore up your lineup and everyone knows your second round pick is late. And so Chase Brown's what you can get, whatever. Right now, especially, I wouldn't be thinking about my running back two, though. I typically think buying running back twos, play as you think, and we're fairly good at it, knowing that have a ceiling, because you can simply think, do they have Christian McCaffrey upside? It's as rushing and receiving. You kind of need both, or Derrick Henry. And even when you're Derrick Henry, you don't have Christian McCaffrey upside. Zach's got a great stat about that. Because he's a nerd and knows stats. So what I'm coming to is Chase Brown is a pretty, like all players, a great acquisition at cost. He's going to have a share of that backfield. It's probably more substantial than a lot of layman's realize. but I think he also has a capped upside. And so I think the hype is going to grow, like Zach said as well, at which point it will be don't buy running back twos, because typically they're the most replaceable, least valuable, and have the least impact on your actual points per game output on a week-to-week basis. Solidly putting up a 10 is not really doing much for you, despite how disconcerting that can be. A 10 floor is awesome. But that's actually a weakness in fantasy. We try to secure the floor without realizing that more variable upside on a week-to-week basis is actually a better, more viable path to winning. So I think Chase Brown is a bad buy, but cost is always relevant, because what you're expecting, him to be the lead running back in the Bengals backfield, it's probably true. He's not untalented. He's drafted pretty well, and his college profile was pretty solid as well. But putting all that together, I think the max upside is that running back two that rarely has an impact, a significant impact on your fantasy lineup. And I want to roll my value into things that have better upside. And so going and chasing Chase Brown doesn't take much, but it might take a little value that you could use to throw at CMC. I know you're not on this train with me still, but Austin Eckler, I think, still has more upside despite his team switch. And those players who've been in the top 5, top 3 before, they're old, because that's where running backs are right now. Even Joe Mixon is probably a better buy right now than Chase Brown. And because he's older, the trade might be not too dissimilar from you. And so that's where my head goes. It's like, why would I throw some value at this thing that I think has pretty likely solid upside, less significant impact to my fantasy team, taking a shot on something that might be a lot less because they're old, they get injured, whatever, but could actually be substantially effective to my fantasy team. So that's where my mind goes with it. But Zach, please object. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, no, I think you're right, except for I don't think Chase Brown. I think you can get Chase Brown for less than what you can get those other players for, because they are both they're established and they are also clearly in. So like it's more of a gamble with Chase Brown. I mean, they just signed Zach Moss. They've still got Chris Evans. So it's not like Chase Brown is just like, here, we're going to hand you the all of the carries. Chase Brown is one of those plays where, you know, a back end second, maybe a couple of thirds, where you can acquire a running back who is not the starter, not the crown starter, but could be a starter. And that's the type of player that I want on my roster. Again, like, I don't necessarily think that, Drew, to your overarching point, no, you can't count on him as being a flex option, especially not in a 10-team league. But you could have, if you have him on a roster, you could have weeks where you're like, yep, that's a fired up, because you know that he's starting if there are injuries to that backfield, that sort of thing, or if he starts to take a little bit more of a role.
I think it might be surprised. Honestly, Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry are ranked as a running back 28, 29, 30, and 31. Chase Brown is 38. Like, they're not a world away. And anyone with Joe Mixon on the roster, if they're not a very active competitive team, is probably more nervous about having Joe Mixon on their team than, like you were talking about, the upside of a young player who's probably going to have I think it might be closer than you think. But I think I think you highlighted that my point segued there. It's not so much about, well, it is about the cost a little bit, but it's more about the value you would throw at Chase Brown. If you can't get those running backs, even if it's a second round pick, I'd rather put that second round pick with something else to go get something else. If you know what, that's my main point. It's not that Chase Brown is a bad buy at a decent price. It's that in fantasy, increasingly, I realize most of our content diet tells us to buy this guy, buy that guy, and it's just a second round pick. But if you send all your second round picks out for these 10 points per game, 10 to 14, 15 points per game players, then you're never winning. You've got no value to get Devontae Smith right now, to go try and get. Even an Aaron Jones, and like I said, Joe Mixon has higher upside. Where are you going to get those second round picks from if we're throwing it at Chase Browns, and if we're throwing it Who did you mention? Jahan Dotson. If we're going for these sleepers, that's why I hate your favorite sleeper, by the way, then you're spending what you could spend on trying to get something that not even still risky. Joe Mixon's risky as hell. Devontae Smith might have had his best season. There's still risk there, but there's more upside. And increasingly that's becoming part of the way I think about my teams. Like, it's a limited value that a team has. Now, obviously, everyone's better at fantasy than me. So you have like millions of second-round picks and first-round picks. You're constantly winning, so you can ignore me. But if, like me, you find you don't win every year and you don't always have that second to throw because you keep throwing it at other things, dial it back a bit and think instead, I'm not going to throw seconds at something worth a second. I'm going to add a second to something else that's probably worth more to tempt someone into actually giving me something that matters, that actually might help me win instead of making my roster look a little bit sexy in April. You know, that I think that's my main point. It's not really a Chase Brown point. It's that value. I think we could spend it better, but if not, you know your league better. If you're like, nah, that's honestly, I can't get Mike Evans. Like, you know, my league's pretty locked in on that kind of stuff. It's more of a redraft league. That's great. Chase Brown's pretty solid. But I think in most leagues, most value can always be better spent on quote unquote sleepers, unless you hit on a Puka Nacua, which I did not, because I was definitely wrong on. And running back's actually the best place to try. Maybe I'm underselling. If you like Chase Brown a lot more than what I just described him as, then you're sending that second for what you think has more upside. I'm not trying to say my cap on Chase Brown is absolute, but that's what you have to decide. If you actually think he has much more upside than that running back too, that's where I would be like, yeah, that's definitely a good place to go and spend value. I don't, so that's why I'm doing this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting weeks out of Chase Brown, whereas if you go get
that's what running back is. It's awesome, yeah.
But if you go get Mixon or Derrick Henry or Eckler, you could get season out of them as opposed
to
like
they start every game and win every game, but they help you win that season because their upside in that 1 week is 27 points.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep.
You get it. You invented it. Anthony, really appreciate that. It looks like some kind of shell with fireworks coming out twice, and I enjoyed it greatly. Appreciate it. I don't know memes. Pete, last gas on Terrence Marshall. No, please. And why he busted. Doesn't it seem very weird that a 6'3", 200-pound plus guy ran 82% of routes out of slot in his final year at LSU? I don't know. I've never looked at it that way, but I would say the way you're describing it tells me no. Like size and weight doesn't matter to me much. I could profile that last year for you if you like, and tell me what I think about it. But increasingly, players in college, he was the lead wide receiver on that team. That's the thing. Like he did a really good job in college. Let's not forget like tank Terrence Marshall because he failed in the NFL. He was an incredible college player. He had a great last season, if I remember right, at LSU for LSU. They're pretty happy to have him. But the team's best wide receiver is increasingly falling into the slot in the NFL, and I imagine that's true in college as well. And that I don't know what impact that would have at his NFL success, if you know what I mean. Like, because he ran a lot in his last year in college, therefore he couldn't remember how to do the other things in the NFL. I don't know what effect that would have. But again, we are literally, even when we get something right, we could just be lucky. Because if you ran reality out again 10, 100 different times, I'm sure there's many different ways he could have excelled in the NFL. He's a very talented person. So I'm not going to try and sell you on the fact that he couldn't have had more, didn't have more in him. I literally just compared him to past players that had fantasy success and found him wanting. That means only so much. Just to, you know.
He for me on, and this wasn't an ask for me because Dave was asking you, but he was a really obvious one on tape that he was just fine. But
and fine works sometimes, to be fair.
Yeah, not often. The NFL fine doesn't work as
brutal.
much.
It's a brutal league.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is having one league where everyone plays. It's like you have to be the top 0.5% of the top 0.5% to even be a good undrafted free agent, you know? Drew Sorensen, does Keon Coleman on tape look so much better than his stats? His stats look ass. That's true. And plus, being an early declare, I mean, that's not a real way to describe it any other way. Is his rank way too low? Depends what rank. My rank is probably way too low. I try to describe it in my notes when I make ranks these days. It's just a role I don't want to spend value on because it does hit. It is impressive. It is less replaceable at the NFL level, so the NFL has more interest in it. But I'm not chasing NFL. I'm chasing fantasy points. And there's not to just do the very obvious thing, but I'm gonna. Deshaun Jackson was the one. And here's the thing, Deshaun Jackson always carried volume. It was never a question. He looked like a good prospect from my perspective, despite even in college being basically what all Keon Coleman's hoped to be in the NFL. But well, if they hope to be what they were in college anyway. So it's too low for me. He should have much more NFL interest, but I'm going to fade that even below what he did at that role. So yeah, my rank is way too low. Is his industry rank? I literally just had the ADP, whereas his big board rank is Jack, you can talk if you want. I'll do this bit in a second.
Well, so Dave, to me, it's there's what?
It's fine. Too high.
It was what?
Sorry. He's wide receiver 9 according to DLF ADP, mid-second round.
And you're gonna get a market correction if he gets drafted in the first round, where everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, he should be higher than that," and that's where we avoid the trap.
Because that's where it gets too bad.
Yeah, because to me, Keon Coleman is super athletic. He was a return man and a good return man. He is excellent in contested catches and high point situations. Very smart when plays break down. He does a good job working back to his quarterback. He would be fantastic for Caleb Williams because he's not a great route runner, but he's a really good, my quarterback is in trouble, let me find space player. And he does play through contact. Awesome. Yeah, and I think the thing when people are really liking Keon Coleman, they are really focused on the highlights, because when he is successful, it is incredible. Again, there is a play, and I think it was against Florida, but I would have to go check myself, where he goes out and runs a slant and the quarterback is in trouble and just kind of turns around and fires it up blindly. And it's 5 or 6 feet above Keon Coleman's head. And Keon Coleman decides to strap on, Jado Rocket and go up and make the high point play over the corner. Just a play that you see maybe once every 5 years. And people are buzzing about it. And all I can think is, what about the other 6 plays that he didn't separate from man coverage before that? So you're 1 for 7 in getting open. And yes, that was amazing that you caught that one, and it was beautiful. But to me, most players are what they do most often. And so if you do good things often and then add highlights, now I can dream. But if you are pig spit for, 70% of your plays and then make a great play, that's not a player I want to dream on. So I think, again, is very slow, very choppy at the line of scrimmage, has trouble separating versus man outside of vertical separation. He's great at going up and getting the ball. He often misreads cushion and uses ineffective double moves. So he'll do hitch and go, or a hesitation and go when he's already got cushion. And so he's not actually gaining anything. Like, in order to do a double move, you have to have a corner up on you, because then you can make a move and they react to that, and then you can counter. I don't know. There are a lot of things, and I think he drifts against zone coverage. So he doesn't separate against man and drifts against zone. So you're really relying on, hey, I'm tall, and hey, I'm strong, and hey, I'm athletic, and I can jump high. And I think that's a really tough formula to win consistently at the next level.
I'm such an ass. My notes on Keon Coleman just says, nah, bro, nah. But I do comp him to Chase Claypool, which I actually have a dual meaning to that. Look, their success. Chase Claypool had 2 top 24 seasons. He was incredibly impressive to watch. I enjoyed the shit out of watching Chase Claypool play. There's not a lot of great success there. And the specific reason was he was also a high contested catch guy, over 20% playing at that A-dot. Going to go to the NFL and meet everyone who was the most difficult on those routes.
Yeah.
And that's, you're going to struggle if you're not Calvin Johnson. And Calvin Johnson could get separation. So, yeah.
The crazy thing about the NFL is every single defensive back is an NFL caliber defensive back.
Was the best player on every team they ever played on until they got there, just like you.
Yeah.
It's a wild league. But thanks for the question, Drew. And if you like him, man, you take the shot at him. If you fall into the late second, I think that's perfectly fine. You want to dream on a wide receiver there. Process-wise, that's not why I'm taking wide receivers, and he's not the type of wide receiver I'm taking. But I think that's a fine value for you to spend on someone you like. I think his rank's perfectly fine right now, unless you're talking about something particularly more specific, like my rank or Zach's rank or Keep Trade Cuts ranks. I don't know what it is. Thank you. No problem, Cypher. I was liking Worthy. Insane speed and can cut on a dime. Yeah, I have some concerns on him because I'm me, and so I can't just like something. And his role in college doesn't really exist in the NFL. We haven't seen a lot of people transfer successful college profiles in that particular A-dot slot bucket to the NFL, but we have recently with both Darnell Mooney and Zay Flowers. So the two most recent, and they both have success. And I really did like what he did. His overall model score isn't great, particularly because of the thing I just said. But if you look year by year, that guy was kicking ass numbers wise, if you ask me. And Zach says stuff about how he actually plays.
Well, no, like, the funny thing is to me, like, speed does not. It sounds weird. Speed does not factor into my evaluation as like it's not one of the facets that I'm looking at for a wide receiver, because I don't necessarily think a wide receiver needs to have speed to win. Like, so everything I watched Xavier Worthy do was not predicated on him being the fastest combine runner ever. Like that was just kind of.
I forgot that for a second. Yeah. Damn, I forgot everyone's gonna like him because of that.
Well, no, everyone hates him because of it, because his only comps are John Ross. Like, so it's like, hey, first round pick ran an under a 4.22. Oh, it's John Ross, so he must be John Ross.
Don't learn shit. They really just refuse.
Peter, everybody wants to have pretty little buckets that they can put people in, and they want to comp, and they want to have numbers have meaning, and sometimes they just don't correlate. But like Worthy, to me, not only is he ridiculously fast, which he showed at the combine, but like he plays with such great pace within his route. Like he changes speed within his route, where he'll come up and he'll slow down and he'll lull a defender, and then all of a sudden he's gone. He can take the top off a defense, and he will make plays deep. He's also really good at finding holes between levels of zones, which is an interesting thing. A lot of times you see players be good at playing underneath zones. He does a really good job of reading a safety. And so if a safety gives him cushion, he'll stop in underneath and make that play. If a safety cheats up, he says, I got you now, and then beats him deep And so he's got this ability to kind of do both, which not a lot of players. He doesn't play anything like Justin Jefferson, but that's one of the things that I loved about Justin Jefferson was his ability to read that safety in a zone and understand exactly what he needs to do to beat him. I do think that Xavier Worthy obviously struggles with clusters of concentration drops where he'll drop 2 or 3 balls in a game. He gets kind of frustrated, but drops don't actually matter. Like they matter to your uncle who's wearing the jersey, but the big hook 'em horns, long horns guy, and that matters to him, but it doesn't really matter to fantasy. I do think he can be manipulated by physical defenders in route. He struggles a little bit to shake press coverage, which is that's a little scary because if he's going to play on the outside, he's going to have to beat press coverage. That's not one of his strengths. And I think that he's got sometimes a habit of trying to split the zone on a cross rather than get that seam. But like, there's so much about Xavier Worthy's game that I really, really like. And I think that he's a target driver as a wide receiver, can play on the outside, can play on the inside, can get deep, can also play in short and intermediate and add yards after catch. So like he does a heck of a lot that I'd like.
Yeah, Odunze is going to be ranked above him. I have him same tier, and I honestly am not even going to try and talk you into Worthy over Odunze. I do prefer Worthy over him, but that's the level of success he was having in college, just to give you reference. I think they're being roughly ranked in the same region. Yeah, Odunze's third. Worthy's fifth. Yeah, no one's particularly sleeping on Worthy, and it's fine to like Odunze more than Odunze was a good player, but yeah,
but
I'm talking to the guy who in the 2014 class, the can't miss class, my guy was Jordan Matthews.
My guy was Jarvis, but I wasn't doing evaluation at that point. But I love Jarvis.
Me neither.
I feel like I feel like I hit that one. Yeah,
I did all right. Still a knee injury. The trade. Oh, that was painful. But yeah, I like Worthy a lot.
Yeah, and then the next one is kind of tied to this.
No,
not as high on Odunze. So first
of all, higher on Worthy, exactly the same place on Odunze. That's probably the
no. I don't think so. I think Cypher's right because I think there are a lot of people who are putting Odunze into that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Neighbors tier. A couple weeks ago, you had Matt Harmon come out with reception perception and just glowed over Odunze. I don't think that there is any comparison between Odunze and Harrison Jr. and Neighbors. Now, that next group of 3, where again it's Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, Odunze. I'm not going to fight you too hard on any of them, and you will have to draft Odunze higher if you want him because I think consensus is going to be he's the wide receiver 3, which means I think Worthy is going to be an absolute steal.
I think he's a fine wide receiver 3, but I didn't see the second part here. That's insane. And where I don't, the execs talking about how good they are as players, and I'm doing a different thing. I do have a slight little hedge here, which is I'm not going to tell you Odunze can't have similar great results because I'm not doing that. But based on how productive they were in college, has to be a separate tier from Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. Like just very clearly for me, like nowhere close. He never made a push to get in that tier, but neither did Worthy. But I like Worthy more than Odunze. And like they're very clearly a separate tier of production and chances in the NFL based on historical comparisons for me, but they're all really good in that second tier. So I wouldn't fight you in that second tier, but I wouldn't even fight you. You can put him in your first if you want. I ain't doing it. And I'll root for you. I really will. But I definitely, if he's getting up to there, not wide receiver 3 is fine. Like that's a perfectly fine rank for Odunze. But if you think he's the same thing as Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. in terms of who I might draft any of them, I would disagree with. Yeah. the firework thing again. Thanks, Dave. JC Crawler, any recommendations on accelerating time in April to April 25th? No, I wish.
Cryogenesis. Like, you just go freeze yourself. It's good. No, we don't. No medical
Don't wish
advice.
away the time. As much as I complain about this part of the off season, what I honestly tune into, because everything fantasy kind of frustrates me at this point, there are a whole bunch of kids. There's Keon Coleman, man, going through like the culmination of a lifetime's worth of work, and I'm rooting for every single one of them, apart from the ones that turns out they're not very nice people. And this is an awesome time of year for them, getting them to see teams, go to NFL franchises, look at what the dream might be like, get a chance at the dream. There is an awesome bevy of content. It's just actually the non-analytic stuff. It's just the stories and watching them visit teams and hearing them out doing interviews. Even the combine was awesome for that. Just there's don't wish time away ever. And if you're looking for something else to pay attention to, those true blue collar stories, like I like to call them when Jake brought them up, hearing about where these players have come from, what they've gone through, what they're looking forward to, their moms getting to come with them to like the draft. All of that is just awesome content as well. Slightly different content, but I would just focus on that stuff because it's pretty awesome when you think about it that way. When I allow myself not to be a human computer with no heart, which is never, but you know. What's up? Hey, Hollywood Titan. Been a minute, I think. Welcome back. Malachi, I do like that name, just as a name, but anyway, has that dog in him confirmed. Malachi, that's the thing. This year, Malachi and Cowan were both getting buzz, like on my timeline and in ranks. They're lower draft history prospects enough. I thought I would like them more than everyone else. We're like, you're undrafted, you're hating these undrafted free agents before they're undrafted. But people like him this year, at least in my circle. I think it's a sign of us getting better. Again, limited prospects. I have them below everyone we've just spoken about. But I definitely think they were solid in college and can reach for that dream in the NFL to be viable NFL receivers. I really thought they would be on my everyone thinks they're going undrafted, but they did pretty well list. You know, interesting.
Oh, so sleepers who aren't rookies.
Oh. Apart from the old guys that we mentioned, I guess. My breakouts this year, I think that would be my answer for this one. Sleepers are people that are going to do better than they've done before or people expect. That's breakouts for me. And unfortunately this year, not unfortunately, but when I get to my NFL trends section of the offseason, which will be after the draft, they're all players that you know. Like, that's where we're at. We're into not some later breakouts, but the breakout arcs based on NFL trends and when things typically happen. We've just gone through some great rookie classes, but not the great rookie classes. And so players that have been out before are meant to, based on how breakout arcs go, if I'm right on those trends. So far, I've been okay. I'm more like Michael Pittman. It's more like Brandon Ayuk. Like, they're not sleepers. Everyone knows who they are, but they're third-year players, maybe even fourth-year players who have actually done something in the NFL enough that impressed and put them in the top 4 rounds of Dynasty for a minute if you're Brandon Ayuk, and rather than second-year players who did pretty well in their first year, or even players that didn't do quite so well or haven't hit the top 36 yet. And so, yeah, my breakout players for this year are going to sound less like sleepers, but that's kind of where I'm at. If that helps. You do have Garrett Wilson, who's gone slightly undernoted since Jets jetted a little bit last year. But most of the tempting ones are going to be older players because their value is pretty reasonable. Not older, but like 25, 26 years old. Zach, do you have any sleepers? I suppose we've both mentioned like disappointing second-year running backs, Tank Bigsby,
yeah,
that kind of thing.
I mean the sleeper for this year isn't even a sleeper. Like, he's been the wide receiver 1, but because everybody is so high on Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp is now wide receiver 34,
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Even if Puka Nacua is the wide receiver one on that team, it was not very long ago that you had Cooper Kupp as the one finishing top 3 or 4, and then Robert Woods finishing top 14. Like to me, that's the I expect a resurgence of Cooper Kupp, and he's not a sleeper because he's a name that everybody knows, but he's a sleeper in the fact that he's dynasty wide receiver 34 or 35 at this point.
Right? No, I like that one. It never even occurred to me. I was saying Evans and Godwin and that name.
I mean, those are all good too, but yeah.
No, Cooper Kupp.
Yes, James Robinson is absolutely right. Thank you, Anthony and Cypher, both of you.
Thank you.
Every now and then I have a brain cramp. Like I've only got so much. I'm like
I was going back further. I was going to TJ Yeldon. I was like, he can't be talking about TJ Yeldon. Jacksonville running back with kind of
no.
Alex, for Superflex leagues, rookie drafts in the 103 to 105 range, do you have a strong preference for either a position or players? Yeah, actually, this year before the draft, which will change everything. In Superflex league, you're looking at least 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks in that range. I'm more interested in putting 2 there. I'm not solid on the 2 yet. Right now, May's my second, but the draft's going to really shake up the quarterback position a little bit. And Zach's really trying to talk me into a Daniels fella or something. I don't know. But you're going to have at least 2, probably 3 in there. But for me right now, there are 2 quarterbacks. Second quarterback to be named yet later. There's Marvin Harrison Jr. And Malik Neighbors. Then there's Brock Bowers. That's it. That's where I'm at. And do I have a strong preference for positions in different draft classes? Yes. As a rule, no. I think we should adjust to where the talent of the class is. For example, like the running back one just doesn't automatically get top 5 pick value for me. Last year, yeah, there were 2 of them. But this year it's wide receivers, quarterbacks, and actually a tight end, which is kind of interesting. I'm pretty set in my top 5 in terms of a big board right now. Zach, thoughts, questions, differences?
No, it's. I think we're very similar. I think if there's any tight end premium at all, and you don't say if there is, Alex, and if there isn't, then I'm a little less. But again, to me, 1 and 2 are going to be quarterback, or 1, 2, 3 are going to be quarterback and Harrison. Like that, though. Like to me, that's where you're at. 4 and 5 depends on tight end premium. To me, it's Neighbors, Bowers, or Bowers Neighbors, depending on your tight end premium. Again, I think Bowers is like everything everyone said about Kyle Pitts.
I was gonna say Bowers Kyle Pitts is a gift that keeps on giving because it's gonna make people nervous about it. It's like
Kyle Pitts had 1 year where he outperformed Bowers, and then if you look at Bowers compared to historical tight ends, he is that guy for his entire career, not just a year. He just I'm outperforming. On film, he's head and shoulders above anybody that I've graded, and I've been pretty good with tight ends. Like I don't often pat myself on the back, but I've been pretty good. I had Mark Andrews as the tight end 1 in his class. I was on Kittle pretty early. I've been at Laporta last year. I've been pretty good with tight ends, and also pretty good avoiding the tight ends that didn't quite get into the echelon that you want. And Bowers outstrips them all based on film watching. He just the only thing Bowers didn't do was be 2 inches taller. That's literally it.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Mayer, I had him as the only 2 top tier 1 tight ends I had last year. I still think he's interesting. But even in my notes and talking to you, I was like, yeah, Sam Laporta's the guy I want. But my ranks on tight ends are Trey McBride, Kyle Pitt. They're just straight up.
Yeah,
that's pretty easy.
Yeah, McBride. Yeah, McBride was the other guy. I forgot about him, but yeah, he was the tight end one in that class, like head and shoulders. So.
Yeah, and Bowers.
Yes,
and Pitts and McBride both look like great receivers playing tight end. I don't like they're a wide receiver at tight end things. I think I think it's bad. But that's why they were good. They were pretty decent size and excellent receivers at the tight end position. Bowers is the plus. He's both. He's not pure receiving prospect, but he does have that level of receiving prospect in him as well. It's pretty.
If you took all
impressive.
the tight end ones from the last 8 classes, put them in one class, Bowers would be at the top.
Yeah. And I think he's gonna fall out the top 5 this year by the time we get to the actual rookie draft, the NFL draft, because you probably got to fit a third quarterback the way the first round's shaping up this year. The first 5 picks are shaping up this year. I don't want to miss on Harrison. I don't want to miss on Neighbors. Everyone's got a love for Adunze or Worthy or Brian Thomas. All 3 could get really significant draft capital, and then you're like, oh, but a tight end, it could take 2 years before he scores a point, and which is honestly true still with Bowers. And then the surprise running back that goes first overall or something. He's probably gonna go outside the top 5.
The crazy thing to me with this class is, you're talking about maybe 3 quarterbacks, right, in the top of rookie drafts. There's a chance that somebody trades up to go get JJ McCarthy, and there are 4 quarterbacks that go in the top 10. That could happen. And if there are 4 quarterbacks that go in the top 10, there are going to be people who like JJ McCarthy enough to push him up into the top of rookie drafts. There are going to be people who like Drake May well enough to take him up in the top of rookie drafts. There are going to be people who like Jaden Daniels to take him up in the top of rookie drafts, which means value is going to get pushed out. This class is so deep at the top, which is unreal. It's so much fun. And I think it's been a little short-sheeted because we've been talking about the 24 class for such a long time that people are like, I'm over it. It just happens every year. This does not happen every year. This does not. And I don't talk about every class like this. And you know this, Peter. We've had classes where everyone was talking about the class being great, and we came in and kind of looked at each other and were like, And then you have classes, But this class to me it's so deep at the top tier of 3 positions, which doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's not to say that late first is better than other years, because it's still still peter out long before you get to the 7, 8, 9, unless someone falls. Yeah, to be clear. Thoughts on Ferguson? Jake Ferguson, tight end from last year. I actually ended up in a few places, helped me out a lot. Again, he's in that 3rd tier of plethora of very interesting prospects who should continue to be very interesting. I like him, especially. It's all about the value, obviously, but a late second, maybe in tight end premium.
Yeah, no tight end premium.
No, I mean,
he's not. I'll answer it. No, sorry.
If that's the best single player you can get for it, sure. But again, I'm all about I think you can do more of that pick by adding it to someone else. I don't think you're hitting the ceiling.
Go trade a lesser pick and go get Evan Ingram for another year, because he's going to be Evan Ingram again. That's what I'd rather go do that than I would.
Evan Ingram should be valued more than
he's not, though. Not much.
Yeah, because the tight ends, which is the same thing.
And he's old. He's old. Whatever. Go get the guys who have the high ceiling. Yeah, I know this. It's Dynasty.
I'm telling you, man. Cypher, thoughts on Penix?
He's left-handed.
My interest in quarterbacks peters out real quick in general in rookie drafts. And he's another one that's getting buzzed because we've got to do something. I think he's good.
So he is a really good deep ball thrower when he has time. He's not great short to intermediate. Like he's fine, but he's not great. And he is very bad when he is pressured, which is not to say that he's a bad player, because most quarterbacks are worse when they get pressured, but he is like exceptionally worse when he gets pressured. Like he makes me nervous. I will be surprised if he is a first round pick in the NFL draft, although the NFL is thirsty for quarterbacks, so maybe. But he's not probably a player that's on my radar. I don't think he does very much with his legs. And so you're relying on him to go to a team who's got a good offensive line who has no quarterback. I don't know. There's the path for him to be really successful.
Rattler.
I don't want any. I don't want Nix. I don't want Penix. I don't want Rattler. Yeah. But I don't even really want JJ McCarthy.
The QB's value consistency. Oh, you mean with Ferguson? And it's a little narrative-y, but I think Ferguson did well, and we should have expected him to do pretty well. I liked him in the offseason. He's a pretty good player at that position, and that offense is going to continue to utilize him. Yeah.
He finished behind Cole Kmet.
Wildly underrated is relative. Like, I don't have him ranked because he didn't turn up for me by the time I got bored with doing ranks. So, yeah, I probably have him way under ranked, to be fair, because he's a pretty decent player. But again, a one-year player isn't going to stand out to me when you've got a pretty deep class, all scoring in that range overall. But yeah, I appreciate other people bringing him up for that reason. Yeah, he's pretty good. He's okay. He was a good college player. Where do you guys stand on McConkey? I think we talked about McConkey ad nauseum, to be honest. I think he's limited ceiling player. His overall numbers don't get a great model score and stuff. When you look through him, you can see he is doing well. Brock Bowers is a receiving offense. That's his problem. But that also says something about McConkey. Good players don't limit other good players. Now, McConkey's a good player, but he's not a good fantasy player in that way, if you know what I mean. He's not going to create room for themselves in the receiving game. And that's a problem when you're thinking about a player playing in the NFL. But everyone's as talented or better than everyone that was in your receiving room already. In other words, he didn't make room for himself. But on a per-touch basis, I can see why people like him. Good yards per route run, good receiving yards per team pass attempt relative to his role, at least on a per-touch basis. He is playing well, but he's not creating room for himself in that receiving. Now, that's not unprecedented for a player that then do it in the NFL. But relatively few, and most of them come from Ohio, because Ohio was doing something weird for a few years there where they weren't playing their best players a lot. With Michael Thomas and the guy who followed him as well was also a little better than his. Is that Terry McLaurin? Terry
McLaurin did. Well. You're probably thinking of Paris Campbell. I know you had a real big crush on Paris Campbell.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Who did well in the NFL or did badly? I can't.
When he was healthy, he did very.
When he was healthy. Oh.
When he was healthy, he did very well. But it was only like 4 games, so.
Yeah, it was all health. Cypher's very good. McConkey is a very good player. I think an NFL team's going to be interested, and I think you're going to see him do pretty good things in the NFL. I don't have a high ceiling for him. I think his median outcome is he can have top 24 seasons, and I think that's a top percentile outcome for him. I think the most likely case is he's going to show up. It's going to be interesting. He should have good time in the NFL and live the dream a little bit. I'm really rooting for that. I don't see, I don't know, who are we hoping for with McConkey? Edelman, Welker? Like, I don't think he's any of that. I think he's pretty good. That's it.
Yeah, he's a player that people dream on. It's the have you seen Moneyball Cypher where they're talking about the guy who's a good hitter and he does this, but he needs to work on hitting a curveball, and Billy Bean interjects and says, if he's a good hitter, why doesn't he hit good?
Why doesn't he hit good?
That's Ladd McConkey. Like, he does some things well, but he doesn't drive enough volume, even in the Georgia offense, where he should have been. Oh, if he's that good, he should have been a volume driver, and it was Brock Bowers. Like, he's fine. Like, he's plays with really good pace. He sets up double moves well. He's very sharp at the stem of his route. You know, he's a very good cutter. He's very effective as a run blocker. He even sets edges, which is a 6 foot, 185-pound guy, is pretty impressive. He's good at multiple levels versus zone coverage, so he'll play underneath. He'll also get into the second level and the second level on the sideline, which is a nice thing. But I think that even though he's a good route runner, McConkey's routes take a little bit too long to develop. And that's part of the reason why you're seeing him not drive the volume of targets, is because if you get open and it's 3.5, 4.5 seconds after the snap, it doesn't matter that you got open, because the quarterback has either had to throw it or take a sack by then. And so I think that part of his issues, I think he struggles to separate against man coverage, like physical man coverage. That's a tough scene. And also, I don't think that he's got the immediate quickness to win in goal line and short situations. So that's going to limit him, because I don't think that he's necessarily a dynamic field stretcher. And so if you're not a dynamic field stretcher, but you're also not a win at the line of scrimmage player, you're not scoring as many touchdowns. And if you're not scoring touchdowns, you're relying on high volume and yardage and yards after catch. And it's hard to see him get there for fantasy in a way that we want to. Now, could it happen? Yeah. I mean, Puka Nacua did it this past year, but like, if you're chasing Puka Nacua, you're already playing the game wrong, to me.
Yeah, and to the Brock Bowers point, again, players really do make room for themselves, or they make their own targets, as it were, more than anything else. Like, why did he fall behind other wide receivers if it was just Brock Bowers? Like, other players were able to get more opportunities per game than Ladd McConkey, especially that final season. I mean, he played 9 games that final season, but per game, he was earning less opportunities than other receivers on the team. Now, they also didn't dwarf Brock Bowers or eat into a significant share of their own, but it's not just Brock Bowers. Ladd McConkey wasn't drawing targets from like a tight end 3 in freaking Georgia in his final year before he went to the NFL. There are other targets available than Brock Bowers, and he's just not drawing them. He's not hitting good. But he did pretty well on the targets that he did get, so he's got skill. Is there a running back landing spot combination that you would have us re-rank the top 8 in rookie drafts? No. There's no running back that I think there's a running back or two that can get in my top 8 for sure, with a great draft or a great landing spot. Both, please, because landing spot weighs little on me. But there's only a couple. Brooks, maybe. Benson, sure. Allen, sure. If you want a great enough landing spot, he could easily enter into the top 8. But I'm taking him if my other guys that are already having the top 8 have gone. To be honest, a running back could easily get into the bottom end of that, because it's wide receiver and they're a little more volatile, or a little more accurate with running back ranks. But that Adunze, Worthy, Brian Thomas tier, because it's outside the top tier, wide receivers are a little more volatile. If we clearly have a much better running back prospect, they could easily enter that range of value, which is that rough range you're talking about, 5 to 8-ish. I don't expect it, but yeah, sure. There's a few great and there's no tier 1 prospects. There are a few players who could easily have top 12 seasons and be infinitely fantasy wonderful in this class. And it's actually pretty deep for that in running backs. There's just not a lot of ceiling on them.
And you're looking at, I mean, if you're talking landing spots, you're looking at Dallas, you're looking at LA, the Chargers. Like, those are the prime, the prime landing spots, I think. So, right. I mean, but like Brooks to Dallas, I don't know if he gets up in top 8 because, again, I think that to me, I break ties to running
that
back.
injury is concerned.
Oh, it is. It is. But if he gets drafted highly, if he gets drafted in the second round, they've checked out his medicals. Like they have seen everything there is to see about his knee and how it's healing, and I don't have that. So I like this is the fun portion of the program. Is that an O or a Q? Oh.
I think it's
so
no.
So that this is the fun part of the program for me. When we get to the draft, the NFL can't lie to you. That is the one time all year where the NFL is truthful, because they have to make selections, and they're making the selections that they think will benefit their team, because there's no sense in not doing that. And so if Jonathan Brooks goes as a second round running back to Dallas, you expect that the medicals are good. You expect that they expect him back and healthy, and they need a running back. And so like that sort of thing. I also think that, again, the top 8's a tough ask, because you've got
top 8's tough, but yeah,
you've got 3 quarterbacks. Quarterbacks should go 1, 2, 3 in this NFL draft, and maybe go 1, 2, 3, 4. But if they go 1, 2, 3, you've got 3 quarterbacks in the top 8 picks in rookie drafts. You've got Bowers. You've got the 2 wide receivers. All right, so now we're at 3 quarterbacks, Bowers, 2 wide receivers. We're at 6, right? Okay, so now maybe it's JJ McCarthy. Maybe it's Odunze.
They're going to take a couple of wide receivers in this first round.
Yeah,
pretty easily.
like to me, though, like Odunze, Worthy, Brian Thomas go above the running backs. Okay, so now we're at 7, 8, 9, 10. So no, they're not getting into the top 8. I could start to we can start to talk about them at 9, 10, 11. Yeah.
They could get into that range, and to be fair, just to be fair to the running back position, there's a tier of running backs I have this year, which is if they get drafted or landing spot to your way of thinking, interest, like Bucky Irving, Ray Davis, Marshawn Lloyd, all of them. I'm just kind of waiting to see what the NFL thinks. That the NFL can't lie. If they get draft capital, they instantly become much more interesting. Not talking about the top 8, but they're going to get into that. Maybe I want to take them over a wide receiver outside of those top 3. Those 3 we were just talking about, and the 2 above them. I think running backs are going to be the risers after the draft this year, because 3rd, 4th round capital to the right landing spot, to your point, that would be interesting draft capital for all 3 of those guys. And yeah, they'd be much more interesting. Top 8, tough, but are they going to rise? Yeah. I think so. What's Higgins worth in 24 pick value? T. Higgins, a 5.
I know I'd put him down a little. He's probably like the 7. 107.
Harsh, but I get yeah. I like the certainty of I've seen Higgins being good, but so I go like 5 or 6, but that's pretty hot.
I like elite better than I like good, and I think that there are 6 players that have a chance to be elite.
Well, I like Russ Fisher. I don't know why you hate him so much. I'm just trying to be nice. No, yeah.
I mean, I like Higgins, but I don't think.
No, that's a good point.
I don't think you're having to. Well, maybe you are, but I don't think you're having to pay the 107.
I think you can get the picks for a better trade than that, but I think we'll try and find something else. But yeah, Andrew Carlson.
Yeah, this one. Are you wanting Bowers over McBride, Kincaid, or Pitts? Over Kincaid all day, every day, twice on Sunday. The other 2, if I'm trading Bowers, I'll take them plus to give up Bowers, because I think but there's no risk with Bowers. I think that's the thing that gets lost in all of this. Like, we're talking about Bowers,
risk.
Yeah, we're talking about Bowers like he is the best prospect we've seen, because he is. That does not mean that he is infallible. I mean, I lived long enough.
Trade McBride and wait 4 years? Yes, I want him.
Yeah.
I tried to say that a little bit earlier. I normally do say it. Like, yeah, and I would not be shocked.
But like to me, like Trey McBride is like cusp, like he's in that like cusp of that top tier. Kyle Pitts could very easily be back into that top tier this year. And so to like, yes, I think I like Bowers' profile. I think Bowers will be a top tier producer, but if I'm trading one for one, I'm not gonna do that because McBride's already there. Pitts should be there. I probably want Bowers over Pitts, but honestly, Pitts has been good. Pitts had 1,000-yard season as a rookie.
He was still pretty good.
Yeah.
So I mean,
so it's
don't
not
forget Evan Ingram. You just got to get away from the
yeah.
I think that's a fair point. But literally, rankings order, if they're all in a draft order, if I was offered the trade on the clock, I'd probably take Bowers because I do like to take my risk with rookies, and I'll take it on Bowers. And if he hit like McBride did, like Pitts did, instant payoff. And I think people are going to be a little shy on it because of Pitts, which we called though. And Bowers, like this time, like wasn't this around when John Bosch and Greg Gilchrist had already convinced people to trade pretty much anything for Pitts?
Yeah, well, and that was so,
and that's not where Bowers is right
now. No, and so I did the evaluation of Pitts, and I was like, he feels a little bit like Ingram, Fant, like that, like really not multifaceted, a player that if he's in on the goal line, you know that it's a pass because he's absolute asset blocking. But then you see him being potentially the 101 in rookie drafts, and you're like, okay, well, you can draft him and immediately turn around and trade him for 2 firsts and do that. Like that was the Pitts play, was not even Pitts. It was the fact that Pitts's value is so high that you could draft Pitts at 101, turn around and trade him for the 105 plus a first in the next year's draft class, and like have immediately improved your team.
Jaheim Bell. I really hope Jaheim Bell goes somewhere that I can use his skill set. That's actually roughly how I feel. I thought I was going to like him a lot more. I ended up saying, like, he's got 11 and 12% targets, really secure hands, relative to where he's catching the ball. Like, he's catching it a lot more often than you'd think. But what I came away walking away, and I'm not one to make a sentence like this, I was a little surprised at myself, to be honest, was he seems to be more of a weapon than a featured part of the offense.
Yeah.
I'd have to redo the whole thing to see how I got to that conclusion because I don't know how he's been used. I'm not watching. Outside of the highlight reels because they're fun. I'm not evaluating that way, but just his role, his volume, and his receiving yards per team pass attempt just add up to this way. Like he's really effective, but he's not being highly used. He's not a huge part of the offense from receiving yards per team pass attempt. And I just came away with this impression of, like you said, if he goes somewhere that uses him, he could be really effective. And that could lead to volume and devastating fantasy points. But he fell a little bit from where I thought my ranks would be on him because of that. I'm like, that's not what I chase. I want to see the volume. But yeah, really interesting player.
Yeah, so to me, his versatility may actually work against him.
Ooh.
So he, and again, not comps, but he like I get so many Charles Clay vibes. Again, a little bit smaller, a guy who and Jaheim Bell did. He played running back for an entire season. He had 73 carries, 260 yards. Like he had a couple of big games. He had in 2021, he had 497 yards. He had 67% of that in 2 games. And there were games where the quarterback got hurt. And so he had a running back playing quarterback, and he would like slip the seam, and he got a couple of like seam routes that were great, but they were like 70-yard plays, 80-yard plays. And so again, I think he's really versatile. He plays inline, plays H-back, plays out wide, can do whatever you want. Post catch, he is so fast for a tight end. Like he's unbelievable. Like he runs away from defenses, which you don't see from the tight end position. I think he's really good at getting inside leverage on seam routes, but he struggles with drops. And at tight end, I think that matters more, not because drops matter more, but because you don't have as many opportunities. And so if you're dropping balls in fewer opportunities, those drops mean you're not making catch, like you're not adding value to your fantasy roster. And then the other part is I think the versatility may actually be a negative. I think NFL teams are going to struggle with how they're going to use him. And that, to your point, Peter, is he's a weapon. And so they can scheme him plays, but I don't think that he plays as a tight end. And I think he's a little undersized too.
Is it? Yeah, there's a lot of undersized. I wasn't expecting this class. My only other point on Bell, something you said struck a chord. It's not bad. I like weird at tight end. To be fair, like some of the best prospects have ended up coming from this weird path where they had versatility could be one route. But you got to remember, like the Delaney Walker took a while. He played fullback in the NFL because of his versatility for a number of years and moved around teams and then became this great top 5 tight end. Maybe something like that could happen with Bell as well because of that versatility. It's not all bad, even if it doesn't happen immediately. At tight end, you do have a little more leeway with stuff like that. So you can just like him, which is fun. That's why another reason I like the tight end position. I just like players. Let them sit in your roster a bit. Richard Davis, going to watch the replay. So if you already talked about it, you don't have to answer again. But what's the thoughts on the Rice and his situation? We didn't talk about it. I don't think we have. But thanks for asking, Richard. Zach, do you want to go first?
We don't have enough information yet to make a real good decision on it, but you kind of have to. Like that's just like that's the way the game is. I would be trying to, and I have actively been trying to get into Tank Dell for Rashee Rice because Tank Dell got he lost to Stephon Diggs. Well, but the temperature of the community has come down because Stephon Diggs is there. Tank Dell lost, right? And Stephon Diggs is there. Nico Collins is there. Dell's value is depressed. He's coming off an injury, whatever. Like that is, and I actually had somebody asked me the other day, how would you go about attacking Rice? And I said I think that I would try to. At that point, it was like a late first and a 25 first. Like if I could get into that, I don't know that you're necessarily getting that now because you've got all the negative attention with the arrest warrant. But like if I could get into Tank Dell for Rashee Rice, I'm doing that. If I could, even if I have to add a second to Rice to get into Dell, that's kind of where I'm going. But I'm also not going to sell low on Rice yet because we don't know. We don't have all the information. Obviously, it doesn't look good if you follow Drew Davenport on Twitter. He's kind of
I was just reading his thread on it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. He's great, but he's still saying we don't know. Like some of these charges could carry jail time, but we don't know what we're doing. And again, and I see Matt, I see you down there saying buy or hold Rice. Almost never lose buying guys with legal trouble. Well, that's true, but it depends on what you're getting him for. And again,
depends on what you're. Carry on. I'll do my thing.
Go for it.
People are already way over certain sections with justifiable reasons. I'm not going to say he wasn't a good player. Zach liked him more than Tank Dell. How's that working? No, I just kidding. They're pushing him to the top 12 in Dynasty. Like buy players with legal troubles because you almost never lose unless you already had it set at a losing proposition level, because you're going to be buying in with too high expectation of what it can come back to. I think he's a really good player. I do not think he's the next Tyreek Hill for fantasy. Right. I think that's where some people's heads are at. And that's a way to lose buying into players with legal troubles. Because while I do think, check out Drew's thread, I am not a lawyer, and I have no interest in speculating on cases, to be clear. I'm not going to do that around here. And broad trend, NFL is going to find a way to forgive. Kansas City has been very forgiving when it comes to players with issues. I think he's going to play again, and I think he's going to be good again, probably in 2024, honestly. But I already think the over-under was set way too high. So now might be a good time to take advantage of people trying to buy low. If their high was set too high, their low is actually pretty reasonable. Like a top 24 player with decent upside in that range, which is nothing at wide receiver, to be clear. It's very, very good. There are only 24 of them, no matter how many people try to tell you that wide receiver is deep. Sure. But if you're buying low and that's the range you're willing to pay, and I actually just think you're paying reasonable prices. And so I would be willing to get out. To Zach's point, you can move to Tank Dell with a plus. That's just a reasonable price even before this. Honestly. So yeah, I just wanted to offer that mitigating thought. I think the over under was already set too high for some folk. And that's how that can work out badly. Thank you guys for all the advice. I wouldn't put that harsh. That's like a legal world. So it's literally just an opinion from another guy trying to have fun playing this game. Yours words as good as mine, in my opinion. But I really appreciate getting to chat it out with you. I hope it has some help for you. Like, I like talking it through with you. That helps me think, and hopefully maybe it gave you a thought or an idea that you can cast aside or run with. But we really just appreciate getting to talk every Wednesday or whenever you can show up. Like, this is fun for us, man. And I forgot one landing spot for he did mention the Chargers. That's the one I remember.
But that's a good spot. But I
guy like Jalen, Jalen Wright could be fun.
Jalen Wright sleeper sell to the Saints, where you just got Kubiak. So you've got I want fast guys. I want fast guys in Shanahan offenses. And yes, you've still got Kamara there. Yes, they drafted last year, Kendre Miller. And so, there's a little bit of, but what Jalen Wright does and the speed at which Jalen Wright plays would be absolutely perfect for a Shanahan-style offense that gets space players in space and really tries to play to strengths. And I think Jalen Wright is super fast. That's kind of what he brings to the table. He is fast man goes fast. And so give me that Shanahan offense, and he can be efficient in not as many touches, because I don't think you're going to give Jalen Wright 250 touches. I don't think that's a recipe for success, but
Jalen Wright, Jalen Warren.
I probably take Jalen Wright is fast. Well,
it's too small for his athleticism. Like I said, I was actually a little disappointed with the weigh-ins at tight end. Like, I don't value the combine much into my evaluations at tight end. It really seems to matter, or at least we have so few things that have weighted signal. Like, I gotta be big, but if you're within range, I'll squint. Same with Edelman, same with Pitts. the receivers at least seem to be getting smaller. Buy or hold Rice? I think we just talked through that, Matt, but thank you very much. Andrew Carlson, Shakir or the 302 in a PPR league. It's a big bag of meh, is my usual reaction to that level of value. I'd probably prefer the pick. I'm done with the Shakir. I liked him as a rookie profile, but I would have expected to see more by this point, and so I'll take the mystery of the pick. But it's pretty what you prefer, in my opinion.
It's the Khalil Shakir season at Epcot right now. It goes like I tweeted that out as soon as Diggs got traded, that everyone's going to be excited until Buffalo drafts a wide receiver, and then nobody's going to be excited.
Rayman by Hollywood. Yeah, I was kind of on that train before. It's about for what at that level of play. Again, we're talking about a top 24 player. He's flirted with top 12 upside, and it's a post-hype breakout year kind of a thing. So I'm tempted by it. But I think Zach had the right take on this. All things being considered, while I love Hollywood, and I'm down with Rice, he's probably right that Rice was probably going to win that volume game overall. They're just bringing in a vet who they know has a very good, capable skill set. They can definitely do a lot of that stuff. But Kansas loves its guys, and Rice is their guy. And all things being equal, I do think this will shake out one way or another, hopefully with appropriate justice being done. It's a little difficult and he probably will be playing it in 2024, and so he'll probably win that game. However, I do think Hollywood is consistently underrated. He can do that game. He can do it very well in that offense. He's not going to replace Kelsey as the number one target. He's going to be good in that non-alpha for the Kansas City Chase offense. And Rice is going to be there too. So probably you're not going to get the upside that we've tweaked at with Hollywood, but he's going to be a viable user. Like he's been his whole career. Top 24 player. Been pretty cool. So it's about for what?
He's going to be what everyone hoped McCall Hardman was going to be after McCall Hardman got drafted in the second. Yeah. Like he is the downfield threat. It's like Deshaun Jackson light. Like that's,
yeah, they're like the one of the few that's kind of hit that range of outcomes, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't love Hollywood just for his perpetual. And the reason I'm being a little bit more cagey about it is because it's a current situation. The guy with Hollywood on his bench is certainly like, ooh, is it a sell high window? And so you could get some terrible offers. So yeah, where everyone's thinking about it, it's suddenly an awkward time to buy Hollywood. But yeah, I'm kind of interested in investigating it. But remember, again, where are you spending value? Where do I want to spend value? It's honestly not really on the Hollywood types when we've got the Evans and Godwin and Cups flying around at this time of year. Same thing as I said for running backs probably applies here. The thing I find for wide receivers, especially someone like Tyler Lockett, Marcus Brown, even Jarvis Landry there for a minute or two, they perpetually fall into this range of value, and they have some of that upside. Hollywood a little bit less so than the other two, though. And like I said, breaking the situation down without some of my Hollywood love, Zach's probably definitely right that we should expect the under rather than the over for Hollywood. So yeah, you probably spend that value better. But if you can't, Hollywood's a solid app, the same way Chase Edmonds would be at a good value. Thank you for all your financial advice.
Oh. Can I give financial advice real quick? I'm gonna plug.
This is Zach only.
No, I'm gonna plug because it's for Fantasy Cares. But if you enjoy at all my rookie evaluations and that sort of thing, my take on rookies, so for years I've been doing rookie write-ups, and I've had several points in time where there have been sites that have been interested in buying them and featuring them, and it never quite worked out because of one thing or another. This year, I have finally found the perfect place to put my rookie write-ups, my film notes, and that is fantasycares.org, which is a beautiful, incredible charity organization that is probably the best part of this community, where you're able to donate and do good for a myriad of other charities, including Toys for Tots, including JDRF, which is a type 1 diabetes organization. And right now, if you go to fantasycares.org/dummies, you can donate, and as a thank you, get my film notes. And so I guess that's financial advice. It's helping you put your money in a place where it's going to do a lot of good. And if you're interested in getting film notes and that sort of thing, you get that. And even if you're not interested in getting my film notes, go to fantasycares.org and donate. They've got right now t-shirts. They've got I think they've got a Masters golf contest going on, but there are a whole bunch of great things, and it's a fantastic cause, and branches out. I mean, it goes to fantasycares.org, but then Fantasy Cares does a really great job dispersing money to places that need it, and being a part of that is fantastic. Like, I love it, and the more people who are involved and giving, the better. Sorry, I don't mean to hijack.
It's the same thing, but opposite. I would do it to get the film notes. It's good writing, fun, enjoyable, and they're really good ranks. So, like, it's why I buy the t-shirts. I want to donate money, but why not get something for it? Yeah. And the shirts are awesome, an awesome way to do that. And Zach's film notes are 100% just as good, if not better. They're actually going to help you out in your rookie dress instead of just making you look stylish in them. So, yeah. Yeah, that's great financial advice outside of checking out Casey Keenum's t-shirts. So,
yeah.
Thanks for grinding. Thanks very much. Thoughts on Audrick's ceiling case in the NFL? Yeah, that's where I seem to be button heads with some of the Audrick truthers out there. Like, I don't see a receiving role, so I think he's a pretty good runner. If you get some draft capital, you could definitely eke into a very viable fantasy role. I don't see how he has a path to being great for fantasy just because he's not a receiver. He wasn't used, wasn't particularly good when he was used a receiver. Like, that's my thing on Audrick.
Well, and everyone is seeing like the one where he like runs out and does like a little slant or a crossing route and he catches the ball in space and goes. That didn't happen very often. Like that.
I'm not saying he can't catch. Well, how is this argument still going? Derrick Henry can catch he's an amazing athlete. He can catch a ball. I can catch a ball. Audrick Estime can catch a ball phenomenally well. That's not.
But I think
how do we not get past the same argument?
But I think that's the difference, Peter, between what, like, and that's the trap that film is. Because film, you're watching it and it really makes you want to dream on these guys because you see like something happen. You're like, right, if he could just do that every time, he can't. I mean, that's the whole reason why I chart the way I do and the way I keep track of plays the way I do, because they don't do that every time. And so a player is what he does every time. And then if he's got juice on top of that, that's great. Like, I think Estime is a tremendous player in terms of a runner. I think he's got good interior vision. I think he runs well inside. I think he will punish defenders and has contact balance to continue on after he takes that hit. I mean, he's a big guy. He's 6'1", 215. He gets going downhill. And I think this is the thing that people are not understanding about Estime, because he had the combine where he ran slowly. He had the pro day where he they timed him fast, but if you actually go back and like do the measurements and not hand timing, he was still pretty slow. People keep saying he's bursty. He's not bursty. He's not. He is a downhill runner, but he is fast once he gets going. And so that's the difference, is he needs a runway. He needs a hole. He's a one cut, like real good crease runner. And he's a very good pass blocker. So like you can have him in games on passing downs, but I don't think he's a great receiver. I think he's very good in a pass protection role. I think he's really slow to cut. So like I talked about him punishing defenders. He also doesn't miss many defenders because he cuts late and he's not really dynamic when he does so. I think he's unable to get out to the outside because he doesn't accelerate very well. I don't think he gets to the line of scrimmage very quickly. It's that ramp up of speed. So you need to have a hole. And again, I think he is like prime Jordan Howard as a receiver. So again, like not to say that he can't be a good running back. I think he could be a top 24 running back, but he's going to have to get a ton of carries to get there.
Yeah, I guess we'll do the damn thing. And the NFL isn't messing around. Like, this is their sport. They're not like, I'm going to draft this right. running back and turn him into something else. They spend millions of dollars evaluating players. They look at what they do and they think about how they could use them in their offense, and they draft them to do that thing. They're not playing fantasy football. I mean, I'm not the last guy in the world to make that point, but the idea they're going to bring him in and look what he could do if he caught this many balls, like, where do you think a GM or a coach's head's at? Like, how can I break fantasy points? How can I break passing yard records to running backs? They do not care, nor should they. There's how could this guy help my offense? What does he do? What does he do well? And then they play them that. It's not that there isn't some receiving in that, because he'll be on the field and he's capable, but they're not going to draft him and then go, and now we're going to turn him into Christian McCaffrey because we think we see it in him. It's like there was a good free agent market for running backs this year. They're not looking to create a Christian McCaffrey, frankly, because they don't want to pay one. They're going to use him at what he does well because they're a professional organization trying to play football, not create your perfect running back. Unfortunately, I wish they were. I wish they were developing players. They're not. Some players can show a higher ceiling in receiving than they had in college. Melvin Gordon is a great example, but he had a much bigger receiving role in college than Estime ever did. So, like, even if he increased by the same amount, he still would be hard-pressed to have a significant receiving role in the NFL, not because he's not capable of catching a ball, but because they're professionals doing a professional thing professionally, and we're navel gazing for the sake of Twitter takes, basically. Like, he's great at what he does. Why do you have to make people disappointed? Not you, but why would anyone try to make a take that is almost guaranteed? Nothing's 100%, but as close as you can get to make people feel like he disappointed. If he gets in the NFL, if he has a job, if he has carries and is a successful player for an NFL team, he's done a phenomenal job. Why would you set this bar at this thing almost literally never has happened? Could potentially happen. That's where he would be good. Like, that's an insane bar to set on a player's shoulder. He's very good. And if he gets a chance, I think he could do good things down to the 40 time, frankly. It's just a very tired thing. It's a frustrating one at this point. You can tell, probably. Sorry, none of that was at you, by the way. Cypher, Flex Dynasty 10, team start 11, trade Walker. I'm assuming that's Ken. Charbonnet, Addison, Faramuth for the 102. It's a big bag. I mean, let's see. Let's break this down. Superflex, so it's a quarterback. A quarterback. The answer is probably yes. I love Addison. I like Faramuth quite a lot. Charbonnet's a nice addition. And Ken Walker's really solid running back. Talking about no receiving upside, but phenomenally good at running the ball. Happened last time. It's a really good package, but I think it's worth less than the sum of the 102, if only because that's like a really good quarterback that goes in the top 3 of the NFL draft, or you could literally turn it into multiple things, one of them being Marvin Harrison Jr. if you traded Black and got a plus. Like, the 102 is just beating that package, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, you're either getting, like, Caleb Williams right now is a top 10 quarterback. Like, right. He hasn't even been drafted yet, and he's a top 10 quarterback. He's going currently like first round ADP in DLF mocks. Like he's going 12. And if you don't get him, you get Marvin Harrison, who is a top, 5 wide receiver already.
I think he's already top 15, nearly top 12, if not already. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. And again,
top 17 in ADP right now in DLF.
Yeah. Like I like Addison. I like Freiermuth. I am ambivalent toward Walker and Charbonnet, but the combination of them ought to be pretty good. Seattle's going to run the ball. And like they're good players, but you're always trying to tear up, especially Superflex Dynasty 10-team league. You want the hammers, you want the horses, and the 102 is either a hammer or it's a pick it's a pick that you can trade for. If you turn around, if you got the 102 and turn around and traded the 102 for Amon-Ra St. Brown, like I would rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown than that mess.
That mess of very good things.
Good play.
Yeah.
Still rather have the guy who is
condensed value, roster spots of value.
Exactly.
And you're scoring more points from a single starting position. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the 102 wins, but I have been reading a few suggestions. Ben Sinnott as a tight end 2 in this class. Yeah, I would feel pretty comfortable with that. Like mine's Sanders, but I ain't gonna fight you too hard in tight end ranks. I think Sanders stands out above the rest, but Sinnott look like a really solid prospect. So I can't hate you on it, especially before the draft. Let's see. I had Sinnott 4th overall. I liked him a lot. I liked him more than Bell. He actually hits over the 250 pounds and over the height ceiling. Yeah. He's one of the few in this class. Really solid player, solid receiver, 1.6 receiving yards per team. Pass attempt to 2 yards per route run in at least one season. That's a solid receiver, especially at his size. His weighted adjusted speed score is a little underrating, but it's fine. And he's the right size and appropriately athletic. So yeah, I like Sinnott just fine.
I haven't finished watching Sinnott. I started watching Sinnott, Sinnott. It's not actually Sinnott. It's Sinnott.
Oh, sorry.
So no, it's all good. So I started watching Sinnott, but it was funny because I was trying to watch Ryan Flournoy, who played at Southeastern Missouri. Okay, one of the games that I watched of Ryan Flournoy was Southern Missouri against Kansas State. And all of a sudden, Sinnott is making great blocks and having catches and adding yards after the catch. And I'm like, man, I'm just trying to watch Ryan Flournoy, and Ben Sinnott is taking over this game. He's just, and I sent a DM to J Mike and I said, he's just tearing up Southeastern Missouri A&T of Ohio University State College. Because that's what I couldn't find Southeastern Missouri anywhere. I had to watch full games of them, which was ugly.
I don't think there is a Southeastern Missouri. I think that's just a blank void.
Isn't that Florida?
Geographically, yeah. Garrett Wilson and the 108 for Bijan Robinson.
I think I'd rather have Garrett Wilson in the 108. And it kind of depends on
Dynasty. You kind of break it towards Wilson, despite your break things towards the running back position. But Bijan Robinson's a different kind of proposition.
It really depends.
Wilson, but man, that's awful.
It really depends for me on your team, your team composition. Like if you're a top 6 team, it's Bijan. Like I think so. But Bijan and Garrett Wilson value-wise aren't very far apart. And this is the type of move that I would make next year.
Get out of running back.
To get out of Bijan, to get into a young wide receiver and another pick that could be a running back. Like it's a year early on Bijan for me, Sean. Like
But this is a pretty good draft class to tempt you into. Top 8,
Yeah.
you're probably going to get a player you like pretty well there that you like, not me, but I would find one there I liked really well too. So,
but you're not getting the running back. Because what I like to do is get the young proven wide receiver plus a pick that I can make another running back. You're not getting a running back at 108. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit.
To be fair, though, you can turn that 108 into a running back. You don't have to make a pick. We just mentioned a whole bunch.
Oh,
that would be good running backs, and you could even get pluses and snowball some of that value somewhere else. So that's what I'd probably say, Sean. I think I want Bijan Robinson in a vacuum. Like I want to think I'm a top 16, to be honest. But in Dynasty, in a vacuum, it's a wolf inside, but you keep thinking about that pick. I'm probably not taking a running back here. There's some great wide receivers. But maybe I should go get another running back and snowball that in that plus into something else in a 25 pick or something. And then you're just moving that part of your roster so much with that single trade. That'd be pretty good. Appreciate it. Oh, or zero. We couldn't decide. I could decide. Hollywood Titan, great show. Appreciate you, man. JC Troller, best show. That's the best show I make.
Make us blush. We appreciate you.
These guys are the best. Whatever, but appreciate you. Everyone hit the like button. Why not? We could use 6 likes. It's me, Zach, and you 6. We appreciate it. Yes, hit that like button. Like it. Speaking of CMC, what about Shipley Loeb ceiling cases? I mean, I don't know Loeb as well. You could make that case with Shipley. It's one of the reasons I like his profile. I think it's a little pie in the sky, but I mean, Alvin Kamara happened, and I thought that range of outcomes for Alvin Kamara would be a little pie in the sky. So again, all things are possible in a world governed by football, but I don't think it's a reasonable expectation. I think Shipley's an interesting profile, though. Yeah,
Laube is another guy that you're slogging through full games because he played at New Hampshire, and nobody is doing cut-ups of New Hampshire. So, like, I'm still working on his film, and it's also difficult to assess a player who's playing at a lower level. That's a hard thing, but. I will get back to you on Laube. Shipley.
I don't know.
You said, speaking of CMC, it's like that's not a ceiling case for Shipley. Like CMC, people have this idea that CMC came out of nowhere.
That's good. Like, no, good point.
Well, and there were a lot of people when CMC came out. So that was the 2017 draft class. That was the first draft class that I started actually doing consumable rankings and evaluating players for people outside of just myself. So I started doing film work in 2014. 2015. By 2016, I started to really kind of dial in the process. And by 2017, I was like, okay, I feel good enough to start talking about these. Christian McCaffrey has the second highest film grade I have ever given out for a running back. It's Saquon Barkley, CMC. So Shipley and Laube will not be in that conversation. Like, I'm sure they're great guys. They're fine football players, but they're not in the CMC ceiling conversation. Shipley, to me, has really good patience and good acceleration after being patient, which is kind of a fun thing where he will let his blocker set up and then attack out of that. I think he's really dangerous in space, both when he makes cuts. Like, he does a really good job of making cuts go somewhere. And it's a little bit like, I played basketball for a long time, and it's a little bit like making a crossover where if you just cross side to side, it's not tough on a defender. But if you can cross and get vertical, so you're making them catch up in two directions, and Shipley does that really well and uses angles really well. I think he's got really good vision inside, but the problem with that is he's better between the tackles. So he struggles with vision off tackle, and he struggles getting outside. And so for a player who you probably want to get in space, it's a weird, he's almost pitching backwards. He does make plays in the passing game. He adds yards after catch. I don't think he's got enough power. And so he has to attack things with wiggle. And I think sometimes he gets caught taking on a defender head on where he like forgets himself and he's like, oh, well, I'll just run this guy over. And he doesn't realize that he's playing at Clemson and that this is a linebacker that is going to smoke him because that linebacker is also going to the NFL. And so that's not really his strong suit. So, like, I don't dislike Shipley. I think he's a good player, but I don't think that the overall ceiling is anywhere near a top 6 or 7 running back. I think, like, if he gets, yeah.
The from nowhere thing, I remember. It's because he's white, let's face it. Top 3 prospects, and Joe Mixon was 4th. Fournette, Cook, and McCaffrey in the 2017 class. So, wow. Guess who has the most rushing attempts, or the highest rushing percentage of the 3? It's Christian McCaffrey. Age 19, he had 57% of the rushing attempts. Age 20, he had 53% of the rushing attempts. Like, that's topping all 3 of the rushers in the class. And he had a 16% target share and a 17% target share in those years. He was doing it in college. From nowhere, my ass.
Yeah.
He was utterly dominant.
But he was too small and he was pigmentally challenged. And between those two things, like, but
I've got a Russian dominator calculation in here somewhere, don't I? Yeah.
But Laube and Shipley are players that, like, that's an archetype that I like to draft, and they're players that, like, third round, fourth round of your rookie drafts, they've got a pass catcher plus profile. Like, yeah, let's do that.
Shipley's interesting. I mentioned him as one of the 2 running backs I don't hear a lot about, but Shipley's got. What's the other guy? I forget it. It's in my ranks, but it's just night and day. But sure, anything's possible. A to Z, 14 teams with flex, start 11 Dynasty, 6-point passing touchdowns. I've got to go, by the way, pretty soon. My wife's having to call me in my own house. So I'm assuming I'm needed. But 14 teams with flex, start 11 Dynasty, 6-point passing touchdowns. Give Jaden Daniels and Breece Hall and receive Justin Herbert.
It must be.
And A-Chain. I think Herbert surprised me in this. In a super flex, it's Herbert, but Breece Hall is pretty cool. Jane Daniels is going to be a really high. It's a tough trade. You all got some tough trades to decide here. Is it a mad deal? No, I think there's a lot of exciting stuff here. I don't see a clear separator for me. A-Chain's oversold. Herbert's undersold. Breece Hall's fantastic. Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback, going probably in the at least top 5 in the NFL draft this year. I'm having a hard time deciding which way to lean, but I want to lean one way or the other. Zach, you got a breaker?
So this is how I would operate, and it may bite you. But what I would do is make that deal or keep Daniels and Breece, or I guess that's the side you got. I would keep Daniels and Breece. As soon as Daniels gets drafted top 3, I would turn around and try to acquire Kyler Murray with that. And then you've got Kyler Murray, who's giving you what Herbert gives you. And you've got Breece Hall, who gives you more than what Achane gives you. That to me is the play. Not that I dislike Herbert, but man, I think that Jaden Daniels going top, he may go top 2. Like, he may be the second pick overall. And if that happens, I think you might even be able to get Kyler Murray plus.
See, I want Herbert over Daniels and QB wins in Superflex. So I'm really leaning towards Herbert. But Breece is worth so much more, should be worth so much more than A-Chain. I'm going to say Herbert, but Zach's idea of actually making a second trade is probably the way to go. You said Mert deal. I get it. It's like plus here, minus on one side, plus on one side. But no, I think there's enough really interesting players here. You got one of the very few young top 5 running backs in this trade. Not to mention, like Zach was saying about Jane Daniels and Justin Herbert's one of the best QB values outside of Kyler Murray right now. So there's a lot of excitement here. You might want to try and rework it because it's hard for me to decide. But Zach's got a solid plan too.
With the other side of that, you could go make that trade and then try to pair Achane and something and get up into like Gibbs. And I would do that too. So
it might be a trade to trade thing. Take the shiny piece of take the Herbert and try and do something with Achane, or just keep the Brees and Daniels side and try and do something with Daniels later. Yeah, I would go one way or the other. It's definitely not Mert. That's a lot of excitement going on in that one. AJ Brown is a target I'm looking for at value at the 105. I keep looking at his rank thinking it should be lower based on how little anyone's interested in him. I think AJ Brown's one of the really interesting prospects this offseason. That's a good point. Mr. Fantasy Cares. Whoever that is.
Hey, Bob.
Noah, Northeast,
Southwest Texas State. Yeah.
Right.
All the directions.
Tyrone Tracy. I actually have him in my database. I'm not overly enamored. I had to switch him to position because I had him in the wrong place. But yeah. I like versatility. Why not? Good night, guys. Thanks for everything. You too, buddy. What's up, homies? Bruce Madison. I know that guy too, a little bit. I seen that, I could say I knew him when, maybe.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you, Bruce. Thanks very much.
All right, Peter, go call your wife back.
I think I'll probably just go see her, but
look over there.